So my guest this week is Stephanie Menere. Stephanie wants women in business to have the financial knowledge they need to run an efficient and enjoyable business. She is a chartered accountant, has over 10 years experience in accounting experience, so she absolutely knows what she's talking about here. She says that finances are the heart of your business and money is the blood. We need the heart to be healthy and the blood to keep flowing in order to be able to achieve goals and the reason you got into business in the first place. And what I really like about Stephanie's approach to financials and running businesses is that she combines getting to know your numbers as well as abundant mindset training. So Stephanie, welcome to Women in Confidence. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Vanessa.
Great.
And I know, to be here.
Thank you. And where are you today? Because I do like to just point out to all my audience that we are a global family.
Yes, I'm in Elsternwick in Melbourne, Victoria.
Yeah. So I think actually you're my nearest guest I've ever had, because you are, nice. I want to say 10 kilometers away from me. So we are absolutely neighbours. I would say we live in the same sort of area, which is Bayside in Melbourne. So how I like to start my podcast, Stephanie, is asking this question. So what does confidence mean to you?
So confidence means feeling good within yourself. It's really getting up in the morning and believing that what you're doing is true to who you are and creating a world that you want to see.
And do you think where you are right now running your business is being true to who you are?
I feel so blessed that I have found my purpose in life. It's something that I searched for a very, very long time. And I always had this little inkling that accounting, I just had to keep going with it, even though it didn't feel quite right. And then I finally found this version of my business and went, oh, this is what I've been searching for such a long time.
And that's such a long time. What was going on at that time for you to get to this point today where you're like, I've absolutely found my purpose?
Well, when I was working in accounting firms, it was really all about pushing and striving and profits and perfection. And that doesn't really correlate with being a human really at all. And so there was that disconnect. I loved the accounting part and I loved the business part. I always found that really, really interesting. And I was always really good at accounting, but I felt like I had to be the accountant Stephanie, and then I also had a personal Stephanie, and those two had to be completely separate. And anytime you're trying to separate things in life completely, I think there's always going to be conflict, and it just creates discomfort. And yeah, so I was just feeling really uncomfortable. I was feeling not good enough, and it got to a point where I got burnt out.
I think many of my listeners will really take what you've just said there and it resonate with them about. In work, you're one person, you're an accountant, you're a HR director, you're whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But then externally, you're somebody completely different. And sometimes they rub up against each other. There's not a natural link to it. And I think if anything, COVID has probably brought some of that, and the lockdowns has brought some of that together, because you can't escape life and your personal and your personality and also then your work. And when did the two combine? So your accounting, clean Stephanie versus where you really, really sort of thrived, and that was, your true self?
Well, after being in accounting for a while, I tried different firms. I tried lots of different versions of accounting. And then one day I went, this was after my breakdown. I had a breakdown when I was working at the last firm I was at. And after that, I went, I just can't do this anymore. This is not who I came here to be. This is not the life that I came here to live. And I'm changing that. And I'm in control of it. I, get to make those choices. And one of those choices I made was that I can't be the only person in the world who feels that my professional version of me needs to be able to combine with my personal version of me. And I started seeing, other people doing similar things. Like one person who was a real motivator and inspiration to me was Marie Forleo, who I loved that she'd created this really incredible business, but she also was talking about spiritual topics. She was being true to herself. She was, dancing and singing, well, maybe not singing, I don't think she sings, but doing all of these other things as well. So she was creative as well as logical, and she brought those two together. And I thought, why aren't I doing something like that? So yeah, it was almost out of a need. Like I had to do something different, or I just wouldn't be able to keep going. So I felt like it was this or nothing.
And when you started looking at, say, Maria Forleo and realizing you needed to do something else, did you have to get permission? Like, I mean, did you have to seek permission from yourself, or how did that come about that you were like, right, I'm going to be different now?
Yes, is the short answer to that. I didn't need to get permission from myself, because I was really in a place at the time where I was doing a lot spiritually. I was working on that element of myself. I was meditating a lot, and I was really connected into the essence of who I was. And so that when I found the answer that I was looking for, it resonated so well inside of me that there was no other answer but yes. The difficult part, though, was the getting it out there to the rest of the world. So the most difficult part I found was with my colleagues. So I have one of my best friends, an accountant as well, and we spend we used to spend a lot of time talking about accounting and our careers, and we were each other's go-to for that. And I felt like I was being weird, basically, by wanting to create this business and by not following that traditional route that accountants do. I felt out of place. I felt like everybody would think that I wasn't a real accountant. Yeah, so it was really difficult in that professional space, was where I found the most difficult. When it came to clients, when I started attracting those clients and started telling people about it, it was, that was something that everybody had been looking for. So that was the reassurance I needed to keep on going, because people were like, oh yes, please do this. But it was the colleagues where it was more difficult. And how I got around that was, for ages, I didn't post on LinkedIn. It was my space where I knew all of them were, and probably not even looking, to be honest, but it was my scary space. And then I got somebody to help me with my social media, and she just started posting on LinkedIn. And because I was never on there, I just didn't even think about it for ages. And then I suddenly went, oh, they're all seeing this stuff. And it was fine. I was okay.
So do you think with the LinkedIn and being visible about your different, I know you use that in inverted commas, approach to accounting, do you feel that was a genuine fear, or just something that a story you'd made up in your head around, actually, these people who are, accountants are going to view me in a different way? Was it genuine?
Oh, it was definitely not genuine. It was silly, completely silly. I know that that friend of mine that I was talking about, he is in partnership with another guy that I used to work for. And I know that they looked at what I was doing a little bit and thought, oh, you could be so much further along in your career if you'd gone down this route instead. And that route was the severe unhappiness route, which obviously, who wants that? But then I had another friend, and he's like a tax expert, very much traditional accountant kind of one. And we would talk about it, and he'd be like, I giggle about it sometimes because you talk about goals and things. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay, because you're not my target audience. And he was like, no, I know. And I think it's great that you're doing what you're doing, because it is right for those people that you're attracting. And so he sort of was that reassurance that I needed to be like, I don't need your approval, because you're not who needs this. So if you need this, you will resonate with what I'm saying. And if you don't resonate with it, that's cool. And you're probably not even going to see it.
Whilst you were talking about the friends who were saying if you'd be further along in your career if you'd done the traditional accounting career path, or what is deemed to be the right trajectory for an accountant, it made me think about success and the definition of success, and people putting their view of success onto other people. I mean, in your view, what does success mean to you?
Well, success is the same as my mission statement for my business, and that is creating a highly successful business that's integrated with a beautiful life. It's not about making loads of money and not being happy. It, to me, and this can change for everybody, like the exact inputs and outputs of what that looks like, but to me, it is having an abundant life. So that means, enough money to support whatever it is that you want to have, but also being joyful in executing that work, and wanting to get up every morning and be a part of that life that you're creating. And also having time to do the things that you love. So that might be to spending time with your children. It might be having time to exercise every day. It might be, you know, having days where you work at home. All of the different like types of activities is irrelevant. It's what brings you joy. So making sure that every day includes joy.
We're just going to talk about your breakdown for a little while because you mentioned it, and I don't necessarily want to go into the details and unearth some sort of emotions from that. But do you feel that you had to go through that breakdown in order to then be like, right, Stephanie, we're going to do a different approach?
Yes, I think so. I think that, you know, that hitting rock bottom is the place where you recreate yourself. There's this really beautiful sort of poem that Rebecca Campbell has written, and she talks about, in it, she sort of writes this letter to herself or to anybody who's listening. And it says that, I hope that you break apart, and I hope that when you hit the bottom, it's not actually the bottom and you break a little bit more and you go down further into yourself. And then when you come out, you're this beautiful new version of who you want to be, and it's the raw and true version of you. And I think that it creates the breakdown created a knowing inside of me that I don't think would have been there, and this confidence to say, I have to do this. Whereas before that, it would be nice to do this. This is what I'd like to do. But there wasn't that driving force behind it being that was saying to me, well, what's the other option? Like, do you want to be in your depths of despair? Do you want to feel the worst that you've ever felt ever again? And if the answer to that is no, then you have to take this route. You have to try. You have to create this life that you've been wanting to create. So yeah, I think it was the building blocks. It was the foundation that I needed. It was the reminder that I needed. And it was, and still is, the motivation.
And when in the lead up to you having the breakdown, what was showing up to you sort of like mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally? What was showing up at that time that perhaps now you've got the distance from it? You could be like, oh yeah, the signs were so there. I just needed to go through that painful experience.